Good morning and welcome to Chef Carter's Cooking Corner. So today on Chef Carter's Cooking Corner, I'm going to be making something called Angel Biscuits. And so I guess I was sleeping on this recipe, y'all, because I didn't see it until I saw it on another channel called Divas Can Cook. And it's a biscuit that uses 3 leavening agents, but 4 leavening methods. And I'll tell you about those as we begin. So first, what you want to do is, in your big bowl, you're going to put 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 cup of white sugar, and we're going to mix this around like so. And you just want to get that sugar and flour mixed in there. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of double acting baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So that's what I have right here. So I just like to sprinkle it all around. And then we're going to mix these dry ingredients together just to make sure everybody is well incorporated. Just like that. Isn't that amazing? So basically, baking powder and baking soda, those are both leavening agents. And then the third leavening agent we're going to use is yeast. So I have some warm water here, and you want it to be kind of like bath water warm, and that helps the yeast to rise faster. So I'm going to go ahead and put the yeast in there, and I don't even personally mix this up. I just kind of put the yeast on top of the water, and then on top of the yeast I put the sugar. And so you just set that to the side. You can kind of swirl it around a little bit and let it sit while you're doing the next step. Alright, and so that was 1 packet of yeast and a teaspoon of white granulated sugar and 1/4 cup of warm water. Alright, so back to our dry mixture here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut in a stick of butter. And that would be a 1/2 cup of butter. So I have it here. I've already cut it up in small pieces. And I'm going to put those in there. I'm going to use my fork kind of scrape that off the paper there. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is just kind of move those around. And actually today my butter is frozen. I usually just take it straight from the fridge, but the colder your butter is, the better. So it kind of works. So let me pull up my sleeve here. And then what you want to do is, you can use a pastry blender, you could use 2 knives, you can even take your fingers and just kind of smush the butter into the flour. And yeah, that's a technical term, smush. But the real term is cut in. And so this is actually the 4th method of making biscuits or quick breads rise. Is you take a fat, and it could be butter, it could be shortening, what have you, but you cut it into small pieces. And actually, the colder the fat is, the better. And what ends up happening is, as soon as you put your bread or biscuits in the oven, the fat melts and actually releases steam, and that forms a pocket within the product. So that's another way it helps to leaven the bread. Alright, and so this is a little difficult because my pieces are frozen. But that's okay, we'll make this work. So one thing with the original recipe of Divas Can Cook, she used a quarter stick of butter, or not a quarter stick of butter, a quarter cup of butter, which is half a stick. And then she used a quarter cup of shortening. And that's okay. Personally, I don't care for shortening for a few reasons. One is it's not a natural product. And maybe one day I'll talk to y'all about that. And if you want to know, just ask me in the comments. But, so I'm going to see about the bigger pieces here. And it should take you a couple good minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to do this part. Okay, so you see there's a couple of big pieces there. So I'm going to smush those down. And then I just kind of go through and look for the bigger pieces. Alright, so I'm pretty much done here. We got this done. And I'm going to toss it around and toss it around. We then want to form a well. And that just means, you know, you push everything to the side because we're going to put the liquid in here. So what goes in there? Alright, so here we go. So we get 1 cup of buttermilk. Alright, and so I'm going to go ahead and scrape it out because we want as much of the product as possible to go in there. And then we have our yeast mixture. Do you see how that got all bubbly and stuff? So we'll pour that in there. And again, we want to scrape everything in there. Alright. Alright, so now that everything's in there, what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use the fork. And I'm just going to mix everything around. Alright, so we pretty much have everything mixed. So now what we're going to do is we need to do this thing where we're kind of kneading, but mostly folding, because kneading biscuits is a little bit different than kneading bread. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So let me go ahead and scrape my dough off this fork. And I'm going to clear off my surface so I can knead. Alright, so first I'm going to do a little flour. Put a little flour is the first thing I'm going to do here on the surface, because this dough is really sticky. So you don't want to add too much flour. So you want to, be careful with how much flour you add. Alright, so let me go ahead and get this on the surface here. So next thing I'm going to do is sprinkle a little on top. Alright. So now what I like to do is I pat the surface flat. Like so. And it's going to be, the first one's going to be thick. So what we're going to do is then we're going to fold this over. So what happens is the folding action actually will form layers in the dough. Alright. And you want to use your fingers as much as possible because your fingers are cooler than the palms of your hand. Again, that's making sure you don't melt that butter. Alright, so here's my second fold. And usually biscuits take about 5 to 6 folds and then they're good. Alright, so we'll pat that down. Alright, and so we got some that's stuck to here, that's no problem. Just scrape them down. Sprinkle. And pat. So you can see the pieces of butter sticking out there. So I'm going to start working to make this a little more square. So what's this one? Is this 3 or 4? I lose count. That's alright. Okay, we're going to move this to the side here. It's getting a little sticky. That's okay. Just sprinkle a little flour where it's getting sticky. I'll pat it down some more. Okay. So then we're going to fold it again. You can see it's taking shape and the stove is looking great. Alright, I'm going to move this here. Pat that down again. Okay, now I'm kind of using, what's this part? Not quite the palm. Alright, fold this again. It's becoming a little less sticky. Alright, I'm going to move this over to the side here. Pat it down. You can get a little rough with it. Okay, and it might stick to the surface. That's okay. Alright, before we finish up the biscuits, first thing I want to do is prepare a pan. So you just want it like a 9-inch cake pan. And I'm going to line mine with parchment. Now you don't have to do this. You could just spread butter around in it. But I'm going to do this and then I'm going to cut these edges off. Push down good in there. Because what's going to happen, the edges will just burn. So, there we go. Get that out of our way. Okay, so carefully remove this and you have a perfectly lined pan. Bam. Alright, so we're going to put this to the side. We're going to bring back the dough. Alright, so now I have some more flour. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the top. Alright, you see how sticky that is? That's why I want to go ahead and put some on the bottom here. So we're going to move this little guy over here. And we're going to sprinkle the bottom really nicely with the flour. I was going to say powdered sugar. It's not quite powdered sugar. Alright, so we're going to do one more fold. I'm going to move this little guy over here. And that's the last fold we're actually going to do. Take this little sticky bit. Let me put that in the middle somewhere. Okay. Alright. Get this guy out of the way. Okay, so we're looking for about 1 inch, and most people, from the tip of their thumb to the first knuckle, that's 1 inch. So you could just go around measuring 1 inch. Okay, and you can just go around and do that, and then make it kind of square. So this dough has actually grown since we started working with it. Anyone notice that? Alright. So now I'm going to take a biscuit cutter. And this is important. You don't want to use a glass to do this. Because a glass will seal the sides. You want to, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle just a little flour on top. And you don't want to do that. If you use a glass, it'll do what they call seal the sides, and your biscuits won't rise as high. They'll rise a little bit, but not like we want. So you just want to press it down, no turning. Pick it straight up. And I'm going to put it straight into our pan. Just one. There's two. Look how beautiful these biscuits look. Look at the edges already. You can kind of see the layers in there. Let me see. We got 3. I got 4. Trying to make as many on the first roll as possible. And then look, we got 7. Okay. Now it's okay if they're touching in here. That'll actually help them rise taller. Ooh, we got a sticky one. Okay, so when you have the extras, you just kind of push those together, like so. We can make a few more. Okay, again, about 1 inch thick. And then I dip this in flour again. We got 8. Dang, that's making a lot of biscuits. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is take a tablespoon of heavy whipping cream, and I'm going to brush the tops. Now, as I brush the tops, I'm going to explain to you a couple options you have here. One thing you can do is let it rise for about an hour until they are doubled in size, and then you'll put them in a 400-degree oven. Or your next option is let them double in size and then put them in the refrigerator so that the butter hardens again. And again, if you let that happen, what happens is when the butter melts, it forms steam to help it rise even more. Or your last option is you can make them the night before and then it'll rise overnight. And actually, when you let yeast products rise overnight, it actually gives it a more complex flavor. All right, so those are your options. All right, so I'm going to cover it like this, let them rise in the refrigerator. And you can see how everything is twice the size it used to be. And what I'm going to do now is put it in the refrigerator for a couple hours so the butter will harden up. Alright, so I got my biscuits right here ready to go in the oven. I let them sit and get hard, well, the fat get hard. Now I'm going to bake them at 400 degrees for about 8 to 12 minutes. Alright, so here are the biscuits. Straight out of the oven. They're nice and hot. Woo! So I'm going to go ahead and move these to a plate. That's the good thing about using using the paper. You can do that. Alright, so one thing I wanted to tell you. If you don't have biscuit cutters, you can use a sharp knife and just make square biscuits. I've done that before, and then I would just put it on like a cookie sheet, or I guess you could use a square baking pan, but you never want to use the cup or else you're not going to get the rise. So you can see, you know, this is like 2 inches tall. So I'm going to go ahead, I let them rest for almost 5 minutes. So I'm going to carefully pull one from here. Now the middle one, that's mine. I love the middle one. Okay, so it's buttery. Ooh, it's hot. So it's not going to come out clean because they're still hot, but it'll be enough for you to see the nice steam. You see how buttery it is. Alright. You can kind of see the flaky layers. So, look at that. So it's got a lot of like little bubbles or little holes. And that's from all the leavening and stuff. And so these things are so delicious. Oh my gosh. These are on point. So it took about 15 minutes to bake. So I got this from Divas Can Cook, and she has her own channel, and I would like to thank her for this recipe. I was sleeping on these biscuits, and so I highly suggest you try these. They're easy, and you know, man, they're really good. I'm almost speechless. So thank you for joining me at Chef Carter's Cooking Corner. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And let other people know about my channel so I can have a bigger reach and can help more people. Alright, well, be safe out there, y'all.